Stay on top of everything from Euro 2024 with the Football Daily podcast.
He's been on the pitch for 10 seconds. Thank you very much.
Get the latest news, insight and analysis from Germany every day.
We've witnessed a bit of history today.
What is the mood like inside the squad?
Your daily roundup of all the Euros action with Mark Chapman, Steve Crossman and me, Kelly Cates.
That would be very difficult for the defending champions.
The Football Daily podcast. Everything football every day. Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. Now, as we record, it's pre-season, so to fill the void, we're publishing preview episodes for all 12 top-flight teams, bite-sized guys to fill you in on everything you need to know ahead of the new campaign. And this one is dedicated to the side who finished last season in second place, Rangers.
Deser's inside the box, pulls it back towards Raskan. Sima shoots, goal! Oh,
what a finish then!
Dessers into the penalty area, he's turned away brilliantly. Dessers through the legs, goal! That is outstanding from Cyril Dessers. Now it's Matondo, chips it towards goal! What the finish! What a finish from Robbie Matondo! A show of artistry from the Welshman.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Now, I'm delighted to say that joining me for this one is former Rangers striker Billy Dodds and journalist from the Rangers Review, Derek Clark. Thank you both for joining. How are you both doing?
Yeah, fine, Iona, thank you.
Yeah, good, Iona.
Today we are talking about Rangers and the season ahead. Before we look ahead though, let's recap how 2023-24 went for Rangers. Now, they started the season with a 1-0 defeat by Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. After a 3-1 home defeat at the hands of Aberdeen at the end of September, Michael Beale was sacked as manager with the club 7 points behind Celtic after 7 games. Philippe Clement took over in mid-October and went on a remarkable 16-game unbeaten run. This included winning the League Cup, beating Aberdeen 1-0 in the final and finishing top of their Europa League group following a 3-2 win over Betis in Seville. Their form tailed off towards the end of the season though. They lost 3-2 on aggregate to Benfica in the Europa League last 16, and in the Premiership they won just 4 of their last 10 games to finish on 85 points, 8 behind Celtic. They also lost the Scottish Cup final 1-0 to their old firm rivals. James Tavernier was their top scorer and Jack Butland their player of the year. Now, when you hear that, sport and football really is a roller coaster, isn't it, Billy?
Yes, because I've been through many of them, so I know what it's like. But they had parts of the season where they really showed that they can be a team. They look as if there are going to be a lot of changes, so they've got to gather it quickly again, the momentum, the pace, because it didn't start well, as you were talking about, Iona, and that's why Michael Beale was relieved of his duties. Then they gathered a bit of everything. He got the fans back on side. There was a real togetherness with the club, the fans. It came through in the park. They got the League Cup under their belt.
Here comes Barisic to the byline, left foot cross comes in, he's done brilliantly. Drops Tavernier's way, he shoots and scores! James Tavernier, with 14 to play, nudges Rangers in front in the League Cup final. And how often has he been the man for this club?
Which was a great start for Philippe Clement. I bet he didn't think it was going to happen as quickly as that. And suddenly they gather that pace and hit the front. Now, the question is, the mentality, is it there to stay the pace and to stay right to the end? And it wasn't. And it's something Rangers, for me, have to rectify, is get the right personnel, the right talent, the right technical players. They need a few players, for me, who have the right mentality to, when Rangers are not playing well, like your Ross County and your Dundee games, they still win the game. And there's not enough of that in the Rangers team.
Derek, tell me, how would you sum up last season?
Billy hits the nail on the head there. For me, they were out of sight. I remember the Aberdeen game at Ibrox. It was toxic. That turned out to be Michael Beale's last game.
Breaks to Hayes, saved brilliantly by Butland. McKenzie! It's in! It comes off the underside of the bar! And Jack McKenzie scores! is what will surely be the winning goal for Aberdeen here at Ibrox.
For me, he should have went after the first Old Firm game when Rangers lost to Celtic by a 1-0. I know it was controversial with the goal that was ruled out by Kamar Roof, but I expected Rangers to really have a go at Celtic on that afternoon, and they just sat back. And so for me, that was the time to make a change in the managerial hot seat. Clement comes in, and like Billy says, he really galvanises the squad. He makes players that are bit part players feel a real part of it. He wins the League Cup early on, which really helps, and the team go on a great run. And as Billy says, they hit the summit, and then you're thinking, well, the fans all started believing. I started believing that Rangers would be going on and winning the title. Celtic were stumbling somewhat, and then Ross County happened.
Sims, goal! Ross County are in absolute dreamland here as Josh Sims has opened up a 2-goal advantage against the title pretenders Rangers, but it's Ross County.
And then Dundee followed suit in quick succession. The Dundee game for me was more worrying than the Ross County game. You can lose games, of course, but the Dundee game, you were expecting a reaction, and nothing happened in that game.
Rangers spill more priceless points in the title race. They can't beat Dundee. Fantastic from them. But for Rangers, well, what a position they find themselves in. 2 games in hand they had after Celtic last played. They've picked up 1 point out of the 6 available. Defeat in Dingwall, a draw in Dundee. And whilst they had chances tonight, they didn't at any point look in total control. They didn't really look like they knew what they were doing at times.
I know the pitch fiasco and everything else, but Rangers should have been good enough to go up there and bounce back. And then you had Dujon Sterling coming out afterwards saying they were treating it like a testimonial. So that really, alarm bell started ringing then. And of course, you've got the Old Firm game at Ibrox, the 3-3 game, a brilliant game for the neutral, but it's a game that Rangers really started poorly and lost that goal after, 13, 15 seconds, and are playing catch-up. And then Celtic really, they've done it. They've been over the course many times before. When Rangers, when the pressure is on, they crumbled. So they need players in there, robust players with a strong mentality, that they can go to places, as Billy says, like Dingwall, like Dens Park, Tannadice, Tynecastle, where they'll go in the first game of the season, roll the sleeves up and get the 3 points. So I think that's the difference between the two teams. I don't think there's much of a gap between Rangers and Celtic, but Celtic simply have more winners in their team than Rangers at this moment in time.
You can't believe that all of that happened in a season. It's quite incredible to think. Do you have a highlight? Do you have a low light from all of that, Derek?
There's plenty of lowlights. How long have we got? But in terms of highlights, I was in the European campaign was pretty good, I've got to say. I know there was a disaster in Eindhoven. Rangers never made the Champions League, but Clement came in and they won their group. I was over in Seville for the Betis game.
Roof is a goal! Rangers in front again. It's Kamar Roof who has put Rangers in front for the 3rd time of the night. What a story this could be!
I don't think anyone's seen that coming. Rangers going out there and beating Betis by 3-2. I was in Lisbon as well for the Benfica game. I thought they were unfortunate not to win that game, and I think that they just ran out of steam at Ibrox against Benfica. But certainly European-wise, Betis is a highlight. That aside, you're looking at the League Cup win. The League Cup's not been in the Ibrox trophy room for many years, so I think that was crucial. Rangers won that again. It was a stuffy game. It wasn't much in it. James Tavernier, as you touched on, Iona, was Rangers' main man in that cup final and won the cup. So I think the Betis game and the Aberdeen League Cup final would be the highlights for me.
It shows you, Iona, that they have it in the one-off game, don't they? I know the European run is not one-off, but big games, individual games, you can go and turn up, and then the League Cup, they win it. It's that attitude I'm talking about, to keep it going, to sustain it, that worries me, or worried me last season, because they had it in the bag. They had the league title in the bag. I mean, no disrespect to Ross County Dundee, especially away from home, they can beat you, but with what's at the end of it, winning the league title would have been incredible for Felix Clement, for the team to overturn that 7-point deficit. But they end up losing it by 8 points in the end, and it's just to sustain it, and those games where you have to dig it out domestically every week, and he just didn't turn up in Ross County. I did the game, I was like so surprised. But like Derek, I thought they'll go to Dundee and they'll show a reaction. They couldn't even do that. So it's down to that mentality thing again.
I was just going to say, Billy, it's that mental strength that you talk about. I mean, out of 10, what score would you give Rangers last season?
It's not a 10, that's for sure, because of the ups and downs. But they did well in the circumstances. You have to look at it as a whole. And where they were at the start of the season, they weren't going to win anything. They weren't going to even provide a challenge to Celtic. And suddenly they go on that run. So you're talking probably a 7, because there's bits that can improve. And it's that mental side, as I say. It's winning games that are so important to go on and win the title week in, week out. It's beating Celtic in the big occasions, so there's improvement to be made. Losing the Scottish Cup was a big disappointment, because for me, Rangers were a better team throughout the game, but they still lost it. So there's improvement, but there's also, you can see there's things coming together, and there's a lot of good at the club, and they just have to get the right recruitment and the transfer window, and I don't think they'll be far away. So probably a 7 out of 10 for me.
What about your score, Derek?
I would score it maybe slightly less, maybe a 6. For me, like Billy said, that they were a disaster under Michael Beale. Clement's come in and really get a tune out at a squad of players that were underperforming. But that being said, they've sort of reverted to type in the end, and we've seen a vast number leave already. The out-of-contract players, expect many others to go as well. So big summer of change on the way. The League Cup, as I touched on, I think that is imperative that Rangers won that trophy early on in Clement's tenure, of course, but it's winning the league is the bread and butter, isn't it? That's what Rangers set out to win. The cups are a bonus, and unfortunately Rangers failed to win the league once again. European run was decent, you've got to say, in the Europa League, especially after a disaster in Cyprus, losing to Aris. Started off slowly, Rangers, but I think they did well to win the group and make it to the last 16 at Europe as well. So I would say a 6. Plenty of room for improvement, and for me, Clement, he has to get that first Old Firm win under his belt. The longer it goes without beating Celtic, the pressure intensifies for me. So that's a huge game coming up on the 31st of August.
You're a hard man, Derek. If I'd have said a 6, I would have again slaughtered. But there are lots to be happy with as well, with the cup and the League Cup in the bag, pushing the title so close. European run, as you say, just losing out the Scottish Cup. So plenty of positives, but they've got to get a few more over the line, and that league title is the one that they all want, isn't it?
It's fine margins, Bill, isn't it? I mean, they were so close to. We're talking about a treble at one point heading into the split, but it just shows you those fine margins. You lose those Old Firm games, which proved to be pivotal, and then second is nowhere, as they say.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
I'm actually going to ask the two of you for another score. Can you tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic you're feeling going into the new season, and why?
I feel as if it's an arithmetic test here.
It is.
I think any club that you're at or working with or support, I think you're always optimistic in it this season. You know what's going to have to be got to improve it. And I go back to that mentality. I'm just trying to think the Rangers players when it wasn't going well, certain games, going back to that Dundee Ross County game, who was the ones that really got them together? There wasn't anybody that really rallied them and grabbed them. The times that, when I was at Rangers, it was your Arthur Newmans and that type, but just got a hold of you, Barry Ferguson's, and come on, we're going to, and I was a part of it myself, but you had the right Scottish mentality at that time. I'm not saying they have to be Scottish, but just that right desire to go and turn the game that's not going well for you. I didn't see enough of that, and that's where it has to improve. But optimism, I would say an 8 or 9 for that. I think you always look optimistic when you start the season. You know where your club's at and you know what's expected. So there'll be a lot of optimism, but there's optimism and then there's actually going out and doing it, and it's two different things.
That's the beauty of a preview, isn't it? Nothing's happened yet.
Yeah. I think everyone's optimistic at the start of the season, aren't we? Especially when you see new faces arriving at the club as well. You always start with the belief that you can go on and have a really good season. I think that the business Rangers have done so far is pretty good. I know they're trying to bring down the average age of the squad, so I think that is imperative. Still think they need to make a few more additions, a few more quality first team signings in there as well. But certainly I think Philippe Clement did enough for me to feel optimistic that he can go on and have a successful season. I just wish he had a pre-season last season to see what he could have done with a full season. So I've got a bit of belief that he can, with his own players that he's going to bring in, that he can go on and finish with some silverware next season.
Have you got a number for me, Derek?
I'll go 8, Iona.
Wow, I like how both of you gave your scale of optimism at the end.
See, I brought him with me, Iona. You see that as like 7 and 6, and then I go an 8 and a 9, and Derek suddenly goes. He's with us. He's gaining in that optimism.
You'll both be pleased know that's the last of the numbers I'm going to ask.
Hey,
but now tell me, I mean, we've spoken about Philippe Clement. Are you quite happy with what he did last season, and obviously his plan going ahead?
Yeah, listen, I think to get a tune out of the players, but when he came in from Michael Beale, it was a bit of a mess, let's be honest. So to get them galvanised, get that League Cup win early on, I think it really helped. As we touched on, he got the team into a title race first and foremost, and he got them ahead as well. And he had everyone believing. It was almost a victim of his own success, I think. He got them to a point, and then for one reason or another, for me, I said before, I think the players just reverted to type. I think they struggle with that pressure on them, and unfortunately it crumbled in the end. But I think with his own players in, I think he's a very good motivator, good man manager. You hear that from the players when they speak to the press, that he has that he gets that real squad togetherness going. So I think if he can bring in players that buy into his ideas, I think he can go on and have a successful season. But for me, yeah, I know there has been some dissenting voices about him and what style of play that he's looking to adopt at Rangers. I think that is a question for next season. I think we need to see and bring in, as I mentioned, his own squad of players and implement the style of play that he wants to adopt at Rangers. Then I think it's fair time to make an assessment on him. But listen, I've got a lot of optimism and belief that he's the man to bring the league title back to Ibrox.
What would you like to see change this season, Billy?
I think they've got to get a striker that takes a better percentage of chances, and nothing against Cyril Dessers. I mean, it looks as if he might be one of the ones going, but he missed too many. When you play with Rangers, you've got to have a better, not return, because his goals, I mean, he had 20 odd goals. Was it 24 in the end, something like that?
22, Billy.
22, was it? There you go then. So it's the ones he missed in the ratio. I think you need somebody who's hitting 30, because if you hit 30 plus at Rangers or Celtic, you have a great chance of winning the title. So certainly a striker that takes a percentage of chances, and that mentality again has got to change.
I mean, even just speaking about that mentality, how important is a strong start to the season ahead, away to Hearts as well?
Yeah, it's huge. And of course, the Ibrox situation doesn't help as well. First few weeks of the season, Rangers looking for an alternative venue with the Copeland Roadworks taking place as well, which is not ideal in the slightest. But Tynecastle away, it's always a tough trip on paper, isn't it? So I expect Rangers to be in for quite a game there. Ross County and Motherwell to follow suit. I don't think it'll be easy. And then, of course, the trip across the city to Parkhead. So big month coming up for Rangers, not only in the league.
Where's that optimism going?
Yeah, give me a new number.
It's a tasty one. I did the Hearts game at the end of last season, 3 each. It was incredible. So, and you see the type of signings that Hearts have made, and they've made them early, got their squad together. It's a toughie. It's a real toughie to start with. Should have a toughie with Kilmarnock as well at home, but you have to start well. You have to gain that momentum, as you saw when Philippe Clement came in. It was all over the place. The fans were disgruntled. There seemed to be a separation from the fans with the team, and he got that back together. So it shows you how quickly you've got to get it going. So a win against Hearts would be a brilliant start to the season.
And Billy, as Derek touched on Ibrox, I mean, what impact could that have on the team and the fans whilst works are being done on the stadium?
It's not ideal, Iona, because you're on the chase right away. Celtic have won the league last year. They beat you in the cup final. You want to start well and show them we're here. We're in it for the long run this time. We showed the signs of improvement last year. We're going to keep that going. But wherever they play the games, I know there's Torquay Hampden as well. Wherever they play it, they've just got to start well, wherever they play their home games to start with until the stadium's ready. It's not ideal though when we're talking about optimism, momentum, getting a good start to the season and you're not even playing at your home stadium.
And that's the thing as well, Derek and Billy. I mean, we spoke about the Old Firm and no wins in 5 Old Firm derbies last season. I mean, that really has to change if Rangers are to be successful this season, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's small margins again for me. I mean, matches are relatively close. That Scottish Cup final, you couldn't fault the players' efforts in that one. Of course, there's the controversial goal that was disallowed by VAR, but it's that thing about Celtic having the mentality. They go out there and it's almost like the 90s reverse, whereas now it's Rangers that are got much of the ball and doing everything with it, but it's Celtic who go up the park and score the winning goal, as we've seen in the Scottish Cup final. So they've got to reverse that. Again, we touched on it before, it's a mentality thing. Rangers need more winners in there for me. As Billy said before, a Barry Ferguson type would be most welcome in that dressing room. Someone that can just drag the game from the scruff of the neck against teams like Celtic. So I expect it to be close next season as well. I expect Rangers to run Celtic all the way. I think it will go down to the final few games. And it's just whatever team comes out on the right side. I think the Old Firm games are massive now for me. And Rangers really need to get that monkey off their back and get that first win, because the longer it goes, the more pressure will come on, as I touched on the manager, to address that slide.
You've summed it up really well there, Derek, because if it's going to be that close, and he said it is going to go at the wire, that means the Old Firm games are unbelievably important. You've got to get draws away from home, win your home games in the Old Firm if it's going to be that close. So that's it in a nutshell, and you've got to take care of your other ones against, go back, keep on saying it, your Dundees, your Ross Counties, your Hibs, teams like that. You've got to take care of that, even though they're tough games, even though you're not playing well. So the Old Firm games are going to be vital next season again.
Tell me, both of you, predictions. How do you think this season is going to go, Billy?
I've got that crystal ball in front of me. Wait there to start reading it. You never know. You never know, do you? Because sometimes you think, Celtic are struggling. You saw at times last season, Rangers, they're all over the place under Michael Beale, and then suddenly you get somebody who comes in and galvanises everything. I think Rangers know what Celtic are going to do under Brendan Rodgers. They know what's coming. They know what points threshold they're going to have to get. They know they're going to be on it when the Old Firm games come along. If it's cup games, they've got to nail it like they did most of the cup games last year. I can see Rangers winning another trophy, but the Holy Grail is the Premiership. And it's as simple as that, and they have to find a way to overturn that points deficit. And Philip Clement will be saying, well, I come in when we were 7 points behind last year. I know we get beaten by 8, but we had it in a grasp. So he'll be talking to himself about things like that. I can definitely galvanise these players. I've got to get the recruitment spot on. If I do that, we have a hell of a chance. That's what he'll be thinking.
Would you take success in the Premiership over success in Europe?
I think we both would take success in the Premiership, because Europe's a bonus. And you want to do well in Europe and show you're a good team, but if somebody said you'll do okay in Europe, but you'll win the Scottish Premiership, I think every Rangers fan would bite your hand off.
Yeah. For me, Rangers have overachieved in Europe in the last few seasons. Since Steven Gerrard came in, I think the reputation's been enhanced considerably to a point now you're not overly concerned with Europe. You know, Rangers can perform in Europe, but it's the bread and butter, it's the meat and drink at playing these domestic games that you worry about those games against Celtic, and it's all about those fine margins. So for me, optimistic that Clement can go. I think he can win the title. He's won it before. He's won 3 titles before, of course, in Belgium with 2 different clubs. So he's been over the course before. He always talks about the story, doesn't he? So hopefully it's a successful story next season, and Rangers can avoid falling at the final hurdle as they did last term. Hopefully, I want to see, if the pressure's on, if they are leading the way early on, that they can stay there and maintain the charge towards the end of the season. But it's going to be difficult. I expect Celtic to strengthen as well. I think they'll be having a part of a squad rebuild as well, with the amount of players that are going to leave and the players that are going to come in. So might be a very different Celtic next season, but I fully expect Rangers to last the pace. They simply have to, or else we're going to be in this exact same situation as we had last season, or the season before as well, when of course Rangers changed managers early on. So let's hope that Philippe Clement is here for a wee while yet, that's for sure.
Some interesting predictions and optimism here, but both of you, thank you so much for joining us for this Rangers season preview. Now remember, we'll have episodes dedicated to each Premiership team, so follow or subscribe to the Scottish Football Podcast wherever you listen, so you're across everything you need to know as we head into the new season. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back with you soon.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.